Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me once again, one of my cohorts here. You're becoming Mr. Regular here. You've become Mr. Regular here. You're now a fixture on the show, and hopefully everyone enjoys your presence. One, Zach Flash Celadonia. You ever get sick of being called Flash? I just, like, if I say just Flash and somebody's like tuned in, they're like, what the hell does that mean? So how's it going, man?
That's why I got the jersey behind me and the tin back here so people know. No, I'll never get tired of it. And even if I did, it's far too long or far too gone at this point for me to go back and change it. I've got tattoos in reference to it, all my handles on social media. So that ship has sailed for the Flash.
Yeah, I've got some nicknames. I got some social media handles from prior life, different hats that I used to wear, and I still have all that stuff, but I don't use it anymore. I just go by my name, and speaking of like nicknames too, we've talked about this with like players, and I'm not sure. You probably got yours maybe playing sports. You were like fast, I imagine, fast, small, shifty, fast guy. Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, small, no, but fast.
Yeah,
yes.
I got you. Well, smaller than me. I'm a 6'5" giant over here. I know you're not 6'5".
No, dude, I'm kidding. I'm like 5'8", 5'9". On a good day though, with shoes on, I can get up to about 5'10" and a half. So it depends on what shoes I'm wearing.
That's still respectable though. Like, you know what I mean? But I wasn't like that fast. Actually, I used to be a 6-minute miler because I used to be all like skin and bones. I was like a really, really just tall, thin string bean, and I bean pole. And people, I used to hate it. This one basketball coach that I didn't even like or care for at all, he used to call me Lurch, and I hated that. And it was just like, if you're kind of the pale, tall, white guy playing basketball, you're going to be called Lurch. That's just kind of goes with the territory. And I'm just like, man, come on now. So
we all get ones that we hate, dude. Some of them are such low hanging fruit. Like, I can't tell you how many times a teacher or a coach tried to be like, Zach Attack. Like, I've never heard that before in my life. So there's a bunch that I haven't liked over the years and just have had to like deal with. The Flash thing though, it's a careful what you wish for scenario with me now, because I have thought about this. I'm like, what am I going to do when I'm 40 or 50 and people are like, what's up, Flash, Uncle Flash? Like, I don't really care though. I wanted it this way and I haven't gotten sick of it yet, so by all means I'll be sure to let people know when I'm sick of it, but hopefully that never comes.
That's funny that you said that, because like I'm walking around just yesterday, my kid has a matching Cobra Kai t-shirt. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy type deal, and I'm wearing it too. And we went to this like barcade, with all the arcade machines, and a lot of fun. But it's just kind of like, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like a 40-year-old dude now. Like, I don't think that like our particular age group is ever going to grow up. And now you even see like where they're remaking or rebooting everything that just caters to us to share with the kids. Mine is like, my 8-year-old daughter is now into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because they made like a sequel to this. They had a very popular arcade game, and it's very authentic to that style. And so it immediately, like, it generated her interest. It caught her attention, and now she's like totally into it. And it's funny how these things like Transformers and Masters of the Universe is back, and that's like all the stuff from like
I remember being a kid
Joe.
To go into the prequels as a little kid. My dad was all gassed up to go take me to the prequels for Star Wars. It's the same thing, whenever you're an adult and your kid like takes an interest in something that you were interested in, it's just, fire and ice, dude. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, it makes you feel like a kid again yourself. You just, and I guess that's the true fountain of youth. But I don't see like, even like my parents, like when my grandparents, you knew that they were grandparents. It was like the flannel shirts, the suspenders that grandpa used to wear, and they looked like decrepit. Like, my mom doesn't look like her age, you know what I mean? She could just walk around, she zips around, we go places like shopping or like these shopping areas or giant flea markets, whatever it might be, and my mom can like outpace me. It's just like, it's crazy. It's really crazy. I mean, other
my
than
mom's
being
like that too.
Yeah, other than being a silver fox now with the gray hair, that's about the only dead giveaway. You know what I mean? It's just wild. It's just wild. But people, our life expectancies. You think about it right now, man. If we were like in medieval times, we would probably be approaching death right now. Like,
I know. Yeah,
if we made
funny.
it this far,
when you like die in the 40s.
Yeah. So, how is this all relevant? Well, with the Pittsburgh Steelers last season, they had a near-death Ben Roethlisberger as their quarterback. And this is all due respect to future Hall of Famer, did a lot of great things, but he was playing with like maybe one arm, and he came back from that injury and still had the team come out to like, 11-0 start the next season, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, now it's life after Ben. So it's, goodbye, Ben, farewell, Ben Roethlisberger in retirement, see ya. And all of a sudden, it's just like this has made the Steelers like the basement of the AFC North. They're going to be just dog crap everywhere. And you get a few outliers. I want to say like Rich Eisen might have been one that came out recently and was like, if there's a team that people are kind of overlooking and looking past, it could be the Pittsburgh Steelers. So today, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Why is everyone overlooking the Pittsburgh Steelers? And I think let's start real quick by looking around the rest of maybe the AFC North. So you have the Cleveland Browns, who have been nothing short of paper champions for how long now? Like practically every season. And it really annoys me. I don't know if you've seen this meme that's floating around, but it was the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Cleveland Browns won the last playoff game at Heinz Field. And that really
I saw that tweet.
It annoys the hell out of me looking at that, because my retort to that is the Cleveland Browns lost the last ever game at Heinz Field because now it's Acrisure Stadium. So
yeah,
that's the whole yuck joke that's there. So when I see anything about with like the Cleveland Browns, and people are saying, well, the Cleveland Browns beat the Steelers, and the Cleveland Browns were this close. They got to the divisional game and lost to the Chiefs. And it's like the way they say that is like some badge of pride. It's kind of like going to the Super Bowl and losing. Now, trust me, I'd be happy if the Steelers had made it as far as the Super Bowl last year, like the Cincinnati Bengals. But unless you are the Super Bowl champion, it's like, okay, this is the first thing that the Browns have done. And since they've returned, they've only had 3 winning seasons, and they were 9-7. And in order to get to this point, to rewind, in order to get to this point, they had to go to the final game of the season, and the Steelers sat 8 starters. They had Mason Rudolph playing. He threw for 300 yards. They're lucky they didn't lose. But even if they have Mason in there, and they didn't have TJ Watt, they didn't have Cam Hayward, they didn't have Joe Hayden, they didn't play Marquise Pouncey, Big Ben, and a few others in that game. And the Browns won by the skin of their teeth. Now they come in and the Steelers play like absolute crap in the wild card game and get their ass handed to them. Kudos, hats off to you, Cleveland. Cleveland, you go to the divisional game, and yeah, you're battling back and forth with Kansas City, but that's because Patrick Mahomes, you knocked him out of the game, and you were up against Chad Henne, and you couldn't beat a Chiefs team with Chad Henne, backup quarterback, in there. So I don't...
Couldn't rise to the occasion.
Yeah, it's like, come on. And last season, okay, Baker Mayfield's hurt. That's going to be the excuse, but now they move on from Baker Mayfield, and that's a whole other story for another show on another day, where you don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to end up playing. And if he doesn't end up, whether he does or doesn't, if he does, they're probably good for more wins, obviously, quarterback-driven league. If he doesn't play, they're really in trouble. I mean, just awful trouble. I don't think that their roster improved as much as people believe in the offseason. They let their nickel corner go. Who else did they trade? They had Mac Wilson playing pretty good as one of their linebackers, but I understand they have enough linebackers there. They got some questions at defensive line. They let their center go. There's still
Jarvis
maybe
Landry. I mean, they lost
Jarvis
his
Landry,
veteran presence.
OBJ, Austin Hooper. They had all this supporting cast that was around, and now you're relying on, you got Amari Cooper, who's always been hot, cold, inconsistent player, overpaid in my opinion. Why do you think Dallas let him go? I mean, they would rather go with recouping Michael Gallup over keeping Amari Cooper. And that's kind of my point. Is they gutted some of this. They gave David Njoku this huge contract, and I'm just kind of like, what has David Njoku ever done? And you've got folks that think that the Browns are a contender, and maybe if Watson plays, but we still don't know if Watson could play in cold weather. A majority of games outdoors, including the teams on the road that he has to play. He's not going to play in sunny Jacksonville. He's not going to play with the roof in Indianapolis on the road. Obviously his home stadium in Houston, and then Tennessee, could be pretty fair weather for the most part. Those are all intangibles there when I'm talking about them. Baltimore Ravens. I'll let you could throw in with the Browns and the Ravens, but I saw you make a comment about you'd be happy if Lamar Jackson were your quarterback. And I mean, I don't know that I can or can't complain, but they got a lot of guys coming back from injury too.
Yeah, no, that's just a strictly Lamar thing. That's just the game I play with myself, is to simplify it the best way I can when discussing quarterback with anybody is, would you be happy with him as your starter? Yes or no? Like, I don't need any other intangible talk or any statistical talk. Would you be happy and feel like you have a chance to win and get to a Super Bowl with insert player X? And with Lamar, I always say yes. I do feel that Lamar can win games. He can get you to the show. The injury thing, I made a joke. I said, I know that he puts his body at risk and I would be worried about him getting hurt, but I had Big Ben for 20 years. I was worried about Ben literally dying on the field for the past 10 years. Like, once he got to 2010, I was like, okay, hopefully he makes it. Like, so I wouldn't be like, it's not foreign territory to have someone like Lamar as your quarterback and say, oh, well, he might get hurt at any moment. Well, we had Ben for 20 years, so I'll leave it at that. But the Ravens as a whole, yeah, I don't really – they lack star power in so many different areas. I think Lamar is a great quarterback in my own way. Marlon Humphrey, he's awesome. J.K. Dobbins, he could be something. I haven't been that impressed by him. I know he has a lot of fans, but I'm not that impressed by what he's done so far. Mark Andrews is a certified top 5 tight end, so I'll give them that he's a great tight end. But yeah, their defense, I don't know. It just that they don't have the same allure or the same feel that the Ravens have had for so long, where their defense is really what they can always fall back on and always have a sure thing, almost in a sense that someone will make a play, someone will get a big sack. They don't have that kind of intimidating presence, at least to me. I just don't see it with them on the defensive side of the ball. But with Lamar, they always have a shot. Not a great shot against the Steelers because he plays his worst games against the Steelers. That's a confirmed fact, not hating. That's just truth. If you look at his numbers against the Steelers, they're not great. So it's probably harder for some people listening to the show to see where I'm coming from with my Lamar stance, especially if they don't watch other games and they just kind of watch Steeler games, which is understandable. But circling back to the Browns, I think they're in a whole heap of shit if Deshaun Watson doesn't play. I won't sit here and act like I don't think Deshaun Watson's good. I was caping for him on this very show before all of these facts. They aren't, facts, alleged facts are coming out about him, So I won't act like I didn't know, but I was hopeful that if we got him that maybe they weren't true. Don't know what the scenario is with him right now. If he doesn't play, they're screwed. If he does play, he makes them competitive in a big way. The receiving core, though, we kind of just hardly glossed over this. It's really
David
they're
Bell.
Banking on,
David Bell.
They're banking on
Donovan
potential and hope.
Yeah,
Schwartz, the guy they stole from the Steelers. I don't know if people remember, but Schwartz, the receiver from Auburn, he was, I believe, the first player the Steelers showed confirmed interest in the draft last year. Not the George Pickens, Kenny Pickett draft, the draft before that. We had a interview or something with Schwartz from Auburn, and everybody online and on the internet was like, oh, the Steelers are interested in a receiver. That means this guy's going to be good. The secret's out on that. When the Steelers are into a receiver, people think we may not see it, but they see it, so we're going to see it. And the Browns ended up taking him, I believe, a round or two higher than anybody thought they would. So they still have him. Bell, like you mentioned, their draft pick this year, and they have Jakeem Grant, the speedster from the Dolphins and the Bears previously, kind of like a return specialist, gadget player. So their receivers are really lackluster. Not a David Njoku fan. He's like the one mistake they made that they keep trying to prove that they didn't make, with these contracts and then bringing them back. I feel like he requests a trade every 7 weeks. So I don't know what they're doing with Njoku. I'm not impressed with his 35 catches a year stat line. That seems to be like what jumps out in my head. That's what I think of when I hear David Njoku.
You need the Homer Simpson. Sorry to interrupt you. You need the Homer Simpson meme with Bart Simpson where he's sitting there and I correct you and say, no, pat you on the head. That's 36 catches, not 35. You're selling him short here, man. He had 475 yards last year and 4 touchdowns.
Oh man,
big numbers, and I'm really going to get into that soon because there is one guy we will be talking about that I think it's a total lack of respect when you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers as of late, and that's Pat Freiermuth, and he's not even showing up in top 10 lists or anything of the sort. So your points about the tight end position are more than valid, especially the Cleveland Browns are going to roll with Harrison Bryant now and also David Njoku. The running backs, obviously, in a good position. You got Chubb and you got Kareem Hunt. And I got a couple of other dudes that are sitting there lying in wait, too, because Hunt's in the last year of his contract. So it'd be interesting to see. Can you imagine they go a whole year with Watson and then aren't able to bring Hunt back? That would be pretty interesting, too. It's just kind of I think that window, they've got cap. Yeah, they got cap room right now, 40-some million, but they have no cap room next year and the year after the way it's already projected. Everything is tied up in just a handful of players. It was just very surprising to me. I was telling you off the air, the Lindy's preview had the Browns secondary. It's the reason why I mentioned him with Baltimore in the same breath, is that they had the Browns ranked ahead of everyone in the league. And I'm with Grant Delpit and John Johnson and, Greedy Williams is still there. I get Greg Newsome, but they got rid of Troy Hill, Denzel Ward, who doesn't play a full season either, by the way. And he could be a game changer, but you take a look at Baltimore. I'm not a Marcus Peters fan, but he creates splash plays. And Marlon Humphrey is as solid as you can get when you're talking about any boundary corners. And then they just added, what's his name? Was it Marcus Williams? And they had Chuck Clark. They drafted Kyle Hamilton. And so if you're going on guys that everybody, see, this is my problem. Everybody talks about the Steelers or they have them down because of question marks, first and second year players. But then they're throwing these first and second year players or guys with only 1 or 2 years of experience. Maybe they've been hurt and they couldn't play. They're throwing them in the same kind of category that increases or lifts some of these positional. I get it's preseason rankings, ratings, but just still it gets under my skin because I feel it's a lack of disrespect for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I feel it's a lack of disrespect for even Terrell Edmonds. But you take a look at everything else. Levi Wallace, Akella Witherspoon was fine. Cam Sutton's fine. Cam Sutton, in my opinion, hot take alert, better than Mike Hilton if you put him in the slot. Sutton is a guy that they've had trouble just kind of putting in one place because he could play everywhere and they've needed him due to injuries.
Better in coverage, for sure. Better in coverage, absolutely. That's undebatable, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Hilton is late on in the season, he had some pass deflections. He had Tannehill threw him a ball directly, if you and I were playing in the backyard in that playoff game. It was just ridiculous stuff like that. He wasn't really used as a blitzer, which was his primary strength with Keith Butler here in Pittsburgh. But the Steelers have DeMonte Casey. You still got Carl Joseph, who may not even make the roster. You got Trey Norwood maybe in that mix. Miles Killebrew. They got so many safeties. Arthur Millett's in that group too. They lump the whole secondary together. And I'm not trying to say that they're the best unit. I was just blowing smoke up the Baltimore Ravens ass about that, and I still feel that they're still one of the better units. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Chuck Clark going forward because of drafting Kyle Hamilton. What do you do with Kyle Hamilton now? They already got 2 solid corners, and you got the guy you brought over from the Saints in free agency. I think that's pretty strong. We'll see what their defensive line looks like. They have a lot of the same, Baltimore does, a lot of the same issues with offensive line. They drafted Linderbaum. Is Linderbaum going to be the answer? We know I liked Linderbaum pre-draft, so we'll see. They brought over Morgan Moses as a tackle. So they still got Ronnie Stanley, who was hurt. Interior of the line, Zeitler's a little older. You don't know who the other guard is. It's still a lot of the same issues. You got your running backs. They still ran for a lot of yards, but that's still because it's built on quarterbacks running. And quarterbacks could get away with murder the way the NFL is set up. It's almost like, and people say put skirts on them. You know what I mean? Flag football.
Yeah.
But that's the way it's set up. And this was the point I wanted to drive home about John Harbaugh. I just heard this on on one of the shows this morning on SiriusXM NFL Radio. John Harbaugh has only won one playoff game in the last 7 years, and I've been saying that. But then Solomon Wilcots goes and says how like he's still like a great coach, and he's only had like 2 losing seasons or whatever, and like all this other stuff. And I'm like, it seems like no one gives Mike Tomlin that same type of credit. Mike Tomlin can outcoach John Harbaugh, I think, every day of the week. We saw it last year when Harbaugh went for 2, and they threw TJ Watt right in Lamar's face. Lamar had,
I was there for that.
Yeah, so was I. And I was in that end zone too, which makes it even sweeter. So Lamar had like 12 interceptions in 13 games or 13 interceptions in 12 games. He's turning the ball over and he fumbles. He fumbles against the Steelers. The Steelers bring over the guy who figured him out big time when Miami went and zero blitzed him. We're talking about Brian Flores now as the linebackers coach. He was the head coach with the Dolphins. These are all moves within the division to match up. All those safeties, that's the matchup against all those tight ends. I think Greg Roman's on the hot seat. We've seen it before when he was in San Francisco, and we see how the quarterbacks don't actually really develop into passers. And Lamar Jackson missing a weapon with Hollywood Brown now. He doesn't have his new contract underway. There's a lot of questions there, and I know they don't necessarily pertain just to this season, but these are things that could start to unravel or fall apart, and you got to count on a lot of guys coming back from injury. I understand they had a great draft class, and I also understand where they were prior to some of these injuries. They were atop the AFC, the entire conference, and then they fell right in the dumpster, and some of that's just plain luck. Yeah, Justin Tucker kicked the longest field goal in NFL history that bounced off the crossbar, or else they lose to the Detroit Lions for the Lions' first win of the season. So it's not just like a Steelers thing here where people will point out that same game where Mason Rudolph's playing. They don't seem to apply the same logic when talking about the Ravens. I think there is a little bit of a love affair with like Lamar Jackson, running quarterback, the gadget, something that's different, something that's exciting. And I understand that. But at the same time, I look within the division and I say to myself, if the Steelers could keep like kind of a respectable record, there's no reason to believe they couldn't just at least split, if not sweep the Ravens. Once again, they kind of have had their number this whole way, as well as the Cleveland Browns, as well as Deshaun Watson also.
Yeah. I once heard someone say you draft to win your division and then you coach from that point. Like you draft so that you can handle and win and be atop your division. And then once you accomplish that, it's on the coaching staff and the team to make adjustments and do what you need to do to get through the playoffs and finish the show, win the Super Bowl. So I've noticed that too, that the Steelers seem to construct their roster and their defense in particular in ways to be able to handle Lamar Jackson and quarterbacks like him and Deshaun Watson. And then you take a look at what the Browns are able to do before Deshaun Watson. They were even doing that and loading up on ways to hopefully help slow down Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So it all makes sense to me, the way they've drafted and kind of approached building a defense recently. And I think this has been going on with people thinking the Steelers are going to fall off or anticipating they will since, Ben hurt his elbow. And similar but different to these talking heads doing it with the Patriots and Tom Brady, everybody wants to do it and everybody wants to call their shot and time it up and hopefully be right. And even when they can start off to an 11-0 start, or when they can even make the playoffs, it's still, see, I was right. They were just, it was all waiting to happen, just a moment away. I knew they were going to be bad. Like, it just took till this point for it to happen. And you touched on it earlier. We made the playoffs with the corpse of Big Ben and got to an 11-0 start with that same Big Ben. And with a quarterback room that is more modern and younger and mobile and a better fit for Matt Canada's scheme, I don't understand how you can think we're not going to be at least a playoff team with the roster around the quarterback room, especially. We haven't had any big losses on the offensive or defensive side of the ball that I can say.
Oh,
You obviously Ben, but not the Big Ben from 2020 and 2021. That's not Ben
yeah.
Roethlisberger that I'm talking about. It's just the quarterback that we had. So we're a better team now, and people think that this is going to be our worst season in years of Mike Tomlin's whole coaching tenure. And I don't see it. I think that because you're going to have probably Mitch as a starter at this point, and that's not just me saying that. In fact, I have a bit of not really breaking news, but it's kind of news, and it's a story that I heard recently, and I'll tell it for you because I got the people here watching if they want to know. And basically, a little birdie told me that they were in a convenience store, a department store, and they saw a Steelers higher up there, and I won't say who it was, but the Steelers higher up is there frequently, and he lives in the area. And he was talking to one of the employees for an extended period of time. And this little birdie, also friends with this this employee of the department store, good friends with him as well.
Supposed employees there for a heist. He's like dressed up
Yeah,
like the
apparently
janitor.
they know each other. I'm not sure. So anyway, the little birdie goes up to the employee after the Steelers high official leaves the department store. And he's like, hey, what were you guys talking about? Like, obviously trying to pick his brain. And the employee just straight up goes, I asked him who was going to start. I want to know who the quarterback was. And he says that, I almost said his name, the Steelers official, this higher up, said, Mitch. Mitch is the starter right now. He's who we want to go with. He says, not a knock on Kenny. They want him to, I know there's pictures of him that look good, and I want Kenny to start. Honestly, I do. But they think this guy said that they want him to add a little more meat on his bones, for lack of a better term. And that sounds so like simple-minded and stupid, but it really, his body it's not totally NFL ready yet, apparently. And he looks good in practice, but they want him to be able to handle bigger hits because mobility and using his legs is going to be a big part of how they can maximize Kenny's talents. So they want him to get a little bit bigger, a little more acclimated to the speed of the game, according to this guy, and just simply not force it. Not a knock on Kenny, but right now they anticipate on going with Mitch. And this little birdie, they have no reason to lie about this to me, really, because they weren't saying, oh, yeah, say this on your show, or like they're just somebody that told me this in passing because they knew that I would be interested. And I tweeted it actually last night, but I deleted it because I wanted to bring it up on the show so I could further explain instead of just being like, oh, per source, this is what I heard, because I know we're to a point now in the football breaking news community that people can say that and just be totally lying on purpose. They can be doing a bit, they can be doing shtick, or they could be serious. So I took the tweet down because I felt like it didn't do the story justice at all. But I heard this from someone that has really no reason to lie to me. And the Steelers higher up official they claim was at this store, he would know, or at least he would be in on who would be starting right now. So take that for what it's worth. And basically, I'm telling you all that because if Mitch is the starter for this year, he gives the Steelers more overall at the quarterback position than Ben was able to give. Ben knew the team more. Ben he knows what the team is doing, but Mitch as a talent and everything that he can do for Matt Canada's scheme, you're welcome. I agree. Will be better than what Ben was able to do. And that's such a tough pill for some Steeler fans to swallow, but it is the truth.
And it is, and that's why I said no disrespect to Ben Roethlisberger whatsoever. Ben Roethlisberger, an all-time great, but you look over the last couple of years, and everybody is always throwing dirt on him. That bothers me, too, to see, Matt Ryan over to the Indianapolis Colts. He's 37 going on 38, so he's still got a lot of football left in him. Man, Matt Ryan turns into a pumpkin after September. He's absolute trash. It's just another retread there as they try and find their Andrew Luck replacement. It's like the yearly. I
agree, dude. I'm out on Matt Ryan. I'm very out on him. Like, respect to his career, but I don't think that was. I was worried the Steelers were going to make that move. I heard that they were like, I knew his money was a lot, so I was like, that would take a lot for us to do. But even if it wasn't, I was like, I don't want him. I don't want Carson Wentz. I was vocal about both of those things. And Wentz at least has a little wiggle to his game, but I still wouldn't. Both of those are just. Stay away.
No. I was the same way. I was like, stay away from Mariota, stay away from Winston. You said Wentz, Matt Ryan. what it would take to trade for like Russell Wilson. Like, I love Russell Wilson. He was like my favorite non-Steelers player, but then again, he was in the NFC, so we'll see if that sticks now. We'll see, man, what a division that is too. Whew. There was, remember there was talk about Derek Carr, even. There was Deshaun Watson. Yeah.
Well, I like Derek Carr, but again, the whole like giving him a lot of money thing. I feel better about what we did now. I think people have said this before, and I agree fully. I think we did the best. The Steelers did what they could that was best for the Steelers. You know, they got a quarterback in here to start for the year, starter capable. Mitch drafted, hopefully the future, and Kenny still have Mason on a cheap deal. Their quarterback room is so inexpensive. Like, they're getting as much bang for their buck as they can without like handicapping the rest of the team. Like, I think Derek Carr is good. I'm one of those. I think he's a good quarterback, but for what he's making, I wouldn't want to pay him top 5, top 6 quarterback money. I just wouldn't personally. If I'm going to pay that money, I want to confirm top 5, top 6 quarterback, and it's hard to do that with a top 12 or 11 quarterback, which I think Derek Carr is.
Yeah, I think the same way with Deshaun Watson, to be completely honest. I understand, like, it's the dude hasn't played football in over a year, and there's only so much you could do when you're not actually out there and playing games. It's the reason why you could like throw shade at like a Mason Rudolph or any type of backup quarterback, because when these guys don't play, now if Kenny Pickett comes in there this year and then lights it up, it's a little bit different because he played college football for the last year. Like, a lot of these backups, they don't play at all other than the preseason. And
that was another thing. That was another thing from the little birdie. The Steelers higher official supposedly said that, you know, Kenny had a great year last year, obviously. And he's like, but, you know, in the NFL, and this is how I felt, I knew it was like kind of true that what this guy was telling me, because this is so detailed. He said every corner and every defensive lineman and every linebacker in the NFL is good. You know, Kenny, he didn't benefit from strictly poor competition, but he didn't always face the best corners or best D linemen or best linebackers. Now he's facing that. So they just want to make sure he's ready. It really wasn't a knock on what they've seen on him so far. And I actually had somebody push back on me immediately when I tweeted about this last night. And they said, really, like, Kenny looks pretty filled out in the pictures to me. And dude, it's not my opinion. Like, Kenny looks like a muscular dude, like he's a pro athlete, but he could add some meat, I'm sure. Like, it really isn't my decision. So another reason why I took the tweet down, because I'm not prepared to sit there and like defend it. It isn't a take of mine. It's just a story that I heard.
You really didn't want to get in a Twitter war, which I completely understand, but you had to hit the nail on the head with the point of why is everyone overlooking the Steelers? And my main point was the Ben Roethlisberger of the last few years, not being able to hit deep balls, et cetera, et cetera. When we went into this whole free agency thing, I even believed, I thought they could go in with Rudolph and Haskins. And when they went after Trubisky, and they did it so quickly, and they took the guy that was basically the head of the free agent class and didn't give up a whole lot for him. I mean, if he stinks, they're only going to lose like $5 million. They're paying him, his cap hit's a little shy of what Mason's making this year. And yeah, at least you still have Mason there too. That's an experienced NFL quarterback. So if you don't want Kenny taking the hits, or if you don't want to ruin or destroy his career, a la Tim Couch, a la David Carr, and many others, I'm sure it's getting to that point with like Sam Darnold, perhaps even Baker Mayfield, with changing all of these offensive coordinators. And of course, there's all kind of shade coming out of there about his attitude, this and that. But dude played hurt, played with energy. Supposedly, OBJ played without an ACL last year too. So who knows? Who's telling the truth on what? Yeah. It's just it's crazy to me to think that the Steelers' offense was absolutely atrocious last year, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to convince me that it could get any worse with Najee Harris entering year 2. With James Daniels, Mason Cole added to this offensive line. Again, it's still part of the rebuild and the repackaging of this, but it's something.
Man meat. More man meat on the line, baby.
Yeah. You've got George Pickens and Kelvin Austin, and even Miles Boykin, for that matter, that are added to the mix already, with Deontay Johnson, who's playing for a big contract, by the way, in his contract year, and Chase Claypool. And Chase Claypool, I heard this again too. I heard it on the radio. Chase Claypool, it was somebody in Pittsburgh, and they were like, oh, his consistency. And we brought it up on the show. The only thing that was inconsistent was his touchdowns. He didn't have a 4-touchdown game. I was getting in this argument. God, I did the same thing, man, on Facebook, social media. And people were talking about how Mitch Trubisky made the Pro Bowl. And I was like, yes, as an alternate. in a season where he threw 6 touchdown passes in a single game. It's like it's Al Bundy married with children type of lore, but he only threw like 20 passes in that game, and most of his touchdown passes were very short because the Bears defense was first in scoring, third in yards, first in turnovers, first in first downs. Like, they were stout, beyond stout. So he had all these short fields, and yeah, that's a quarter of his touchdowns in one game in a 16-game season. He threw 24 touchdowns, but he only threw, let me do the quick math here, 18 in the other 15 games. And that still is enough, maybe, to win you games. I'm not going to knock it. Mitch has 50 starts and should be looked at as the guy, unless he just completely bombs out. I think it is his job to give up through training
Absolutely,
camp.
Yeah, that's important for people to remember. There's no reason for Mitch to just have the job. If he's stinking in camp and like not looking good in preseason games, by all means, I expect and hope the Steelers to do something about that, as in go to the next guy. So yeah, it's not Mitch's, like, he's not set in stone, but right now, yeah, it's his to lose. That's the perfect way to describe it. That's such a tired cliche in sports, but he is a breathing definition of that right now.
And of course, I'm still going to talk about this dude.
Of course you are.
When I'm on social media and I'm getting into a lot of these arguments with the Mason Rudolph haters, it's not necessarily because I believe he's like the second coming of Ben Roethlisberger or Tom Brady. It's just that I feel that his critics have it all wrong. I feel that they're criticizing some things about his game or his play to date that just are unfair. And like,
go on. Yeah, go on.
We were just talking about with the players that come straight from college. You got to remember, Mason sat a year, 2019. He just won the backup job, so he was QB3, and he gets thrown out there with Randy Fichtner as an offensive coordinator and no quarterbacks coach. And again, the cast of players that were around him. Juju was often hurt. Deontay was a rookie. Let's say Tevin Jones, Deion Kane, Johnny Holton, Dante Moncrief, Kareth White, Trey Edmonds, Benny Snell, Nick Vannett, like Vance McDonald, aside from offensive linemen, and he even outpaced some of them. You remember, he wasn't exactly the paradigm of health of being always on the field. And he played the most offensive snaps of any of the skill position players that season, including both quarterbacks, all the quarterbacks, because Ben played a game and a half. That's unreal when you think about it. So there was a lot of trouble there, and people try and say, well, I've already seen enough of Mason. If you've seen enough of anybody, it's probably Mitch Trubisky with 50 games. So if you're going to make the same arguments and say that he was on a trash Bears team, that's not necessarily right either. Allen Robinson was probably better than anything that Mason had to throw to in 2019. You had Jordan Howard, but not necessarily the greatest running back, but probably better than a lot of what the Steelers were going through. Tariq Cohen was the leading wide receiver.
At the time, Jordan Howard was good. He torched us. Yeah,
so this isn't to drag. Yeah, it's not to drag Trubisky, but
no, you're making sense. I get what you're saying. You're making sense. Yeah, it's in a vacuum, dude. Yeah, for sure. And that's why I don't do that. Like, I am a Mason hater by your standards, but I don't critique him for the things that you're saying, because I do see that light, that he has had a shitty hand dealt to him, but he doesn't fit my ideal quarterback. That's why I don't like get into the whole like, oh, he can't do this, he can't do that. My whole thing is the athleticism and the style of quarterback he particularly is. It's the same thing with Matt Ryan. I didn't want a young Matt Ryan either in today's NFL. It's just I don't like the pocket passers. I've exhausted my points about Mason and why I don't like him. I try to actually give an intelligent point of view. I see you argue with the people that just are like, he sucks, like he can't do this, he can't do that. So you're making sense to me. I hear you out, but there are always going to be the unreasonable people on Twitter that don't want to hear anything or understand anything really, because they think it's all, you're either all one way or all the other. Because you just said before you said all of that, I don't think Mason Rudolph is the next Big Ben or Tom Brady. And that was really like a reasonable person like me heard that and it's like, okay, yeah, cool, make your points. Because like those are the people that I have to argue with that think that he can be something like that still.
And I don't think Mitch
we're stuck in the middle.
Is either.
You and I are stuck in the middle.
Yeah, I don't think Mitch is either, to be completely honest.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And Kenny Pickett, we don't know. We have no way of knowing.
We don't know.
But the main big point is, of all three of those names, and I'm not mentioning Chris Oladokun because I truly do not believe. I believe he's a practice squad player for at least this year. But the Steelers weren't going to go into this season with just Mason Rudolph as the main option. Now, if Haskins had played to a level where they felt Trubisky was before, rest in peace, all of that stuff happened when he went down to that get together with the team, then maybe they roll with both of those guys. But apparently they saw something different, and they probably at this time, and they bring in Trubisky or whatever, because they probably didn't feel they could get Kenny Pickett in the draft. They might have had to, what you're going to have to give up for a quarterback, and he fell to him, and that could very much turn into an Aaron Rodgers type of story.
You saw how excited Tomlin was to get on the phone. They said themselves they didn't expect Kenny to get there. Once the Saints didn't pick him, the Steelers picked very, very fast. I remember, despite my sobriety level, I remember very clearly how fast we picked, and I was sitting there like, okay, it's definitely a quarterback, so they're all left.
We remember, we can go back on YouTube in the archives here and take a look at that.
Surprised YouTube hasn't taken it down for explicit content.
Please don't impact us. I don't need any more of their garbage. But any of the three between Trubisky, Rudolph, and even Pickett, I think can probably give you a level of play. Now, Pickett, I'm going to say a little less than, and maybe Rudolph, and then of course Trubisky, we should have the higher floor based on the experience and what we know. Pickett could come out there and be absolutely like bad. Like he could show a flash like a Nick Mullins or a Mike White or somebody like that, and then be completely
that's a
bad.
reality. That's a reality we aren't prepared for or I totally agree. I think about that all the time, actually, with how just trying not to take like Ben for granted over the years, and how like, man, we've seen so many teams just like struggle like to find quarterbacks. So yeah, we're obviously hoping, and I would like to go to sleep at night thinking that Kenny's going to be the guy and he has what it takes and has all the right tools, but that is a reality that is possible that he won't be good. Good vibes only, I hope he is good, but that is a reality that could happen.
And my point still being, at what level was Ben Roethlisberger playing at? Was he a top 15 quarterback last year, the last 2 years? Maybe at some point, maybe he started to kind of tail off, got old, the cold weather gets to your bones, whatever be the case. I think that the Steelers could produce more with offense. Plus, you've got more around him. And like I said, the one guy that was completely, I think, being overlooked in all of this as Pat Freiermuth. And we were just dragging on David Njoku. And I've got a lot of good stuff here that I want to bring up in regard to tight end numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So we take a look at Pat Freiermuth. If you could see this up on the screen for those of you supporting us over on YouTube, thank you again. 60 receptions, 497 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I found out via that Lindy's Pro Football Preview, which that particular excerpt for the Steelers was written by Ray Fittipaldo, that's one of the top. There's only 3 tight ends that had in the entire league. This isn't just the Pittsburgh Steelers that have had 3 tight ends had a better rookie season than Pat Freiermuth. I was not aware of that. So I started to dig up some numbers on some of the classics or throwbacks players that are here. And let's, of course, bring up the guy with the big contract that we were just talking trash on, David Njoku. I mean, let's look at these years. He was a first-round draft pick. 32 catches, 386, 4 TDs, 56, 639 for 4. The 1 year he was kind of banged up, 5 for 41 and 1, 19 for 213 and 2. And then last year, 36 for 475 and 4 touchdowns. That doesn't touch Freiermuth any of those years. Freiermuth has already outpaced him all the way around. Tony Gonzalez, Hall of Famer. So let's bring up Tony's numbers.
What's that average for Njoku? How many catches per year does he average?
Njoku, let's see if it'll work. Sometimes this Pro Football Reference doesn't want to do it. 39, 459 and 4 touchdowns.
Nailed that with 35. That was off the top of my head.
I know, that's pretty wild, right? So Tony Gonzalez, rookie year, 33 for 368, 2 touchdowns the following year with 59 for 621. And then he starts
88.
Starts climbing.
Same number.
He starts climbing there. Gronk, 42 for 546 and 10 touchdowns. So he's a touchdown machine, obviously 17 touchdowns and over 1,300 yards in year 2 in the league. Travis Kelce didn't really play his first year, 67 receptions, 862 yards, 5 touchdowns. He kind of matches it almost the same, 72 catches, 875.
Yeah, he had like a redshirt season, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that Andy Reid, that Andy Reid's going to do. Got Mark Andrews now, who everyone's got the big hard on for here. And I do too.
You talking shit on me, dude. He's good.
He is, but look, 34 for 552 and 3 touchdowns. Then he went 64 for 852 and 10. So, and then he regressed, and now he's back. I think he's had the best receiving year of any Ravens receiver ever with 107, 1361, and 9 touchdowns. I'm not trying to say that Freiermuth is going to hit 1,000 yards receiving when you're talking about all the other weapons with Deontay Johnson. And by the way, Ravens had 2,000-yard receivers last year, which kind of surprised me as well. Let me see here. I actually had it up on my screen. Yeah, Hollywood Brown had 1,008. So he just got over that hump, and now he's gone. And this is the reason why I'm saying, are people disrespecting the Steelers here? Because Mitch Trubisky's Pro Bowl year, Tariq Cohen, leading receiver on the team, Trey Burton was in that mix there. So if you need to dump off Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, who are you looking for? You need a security blanket if you're not the strongest of quarterback. You're not making the reads with your receivers, and that's going to be Freiermuth. That's going to be Najee Harris, who topped 1,500 yards total, all-purpose scrimmage yards. The offense is definitely better. Let's talk about the defense, because we forget about this, and we spend an awful lot of time on all the different offensive stuff, and as well as 2 of the opponents.
We haven't even said the words T.J. Watt. We're talking about why people overlook the Steelers.
Oh my God! I mean, defensive player of the year. Defensive player of the year.
That'll be in the comments.
No, it will be, because somebody won't listen to the entire thing. Our 2%ers won't comment like that. They're better than that.
Of course, no.
So TJ Watt, defensive player of the year, and he's been in that mix. He could completely change the game. We saw that with Kansas City. If the Steelers had any kind of offense there, you still
Thank you, TJ Watt, for those first 15 minutes. They were sweet, sweet, sweet 15 minutes.
They were, and then everybody got gassed. And then I saw somebody totally put the respect on the name of Cam Hayward as well. You could put Aaron Donald number 1, and then they're like, "Oh, really? Cam Hayward number 2? That's just a Yinzer take. That's just some bias." No, you're full of crap. And Minka,
if you know ball, Cam's second best to Aaron Donald. That's confirmed. If you know ball and you claim to know ball, you can't know ball and say Cam Hayward isn't the second best interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, and then they try and tell you that you don't know or watch football. And I think you said something earlier that I want to bring back up. Maybe you don't watch other games besides Steelers games. And that's exactly what I think some people have with the Mitch Trubisky versus Mason Rudolph. You haven't seen Trubisky play enough. You weren't watching those games in the same type of detail as everyone else. But back to the defensive side of the ball, and that's the reason why you think Trubisky's this big, coming over. There's a reason he's not with the Bears, obviously. And then Buffalo, they weren't going to pay. Well, Steelers still really didn't pay him, though. But I get it. It's opportunity also. He was never going to start in Buffalo unless Allen got hurt. Well, let's bring that up for a real quick second, too. It's funny across the AFC North. You mentioned Lamar Jackson. He's about the only guy left, and he gets dragged plenty for maybe not throwing the ball the best or turning the ball over, being more of a running quarterback. But Baker's out of this now from that same draft. Baker, Sam Darnold, they're going to compete with each other in Carolina. Rosen is I don't even think he's signed now again. Yeah, I know he was backing up with the Falcons last year, but that was kind of I think somebody else got knocked out of that picture. The only guys left, really, Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph.
Josh Allen.
And of course Josh Allen, but yeah, Josh Allen's his own beast there. So, but it's funny, it's 6 picks, and we're already talking about how maybe half of them have busted out of the league. There's never a sure thing there. We tend to forget on the defensive side of the ball too with the Steelers. They got Terrell Edmonds back on a 1 year. We mentioned some of the other names. Levi Wallace is going to be there, so they don't have to solely hope that Akello Witherspoon is the guy, or that Cam Sutton has to play on the outside. But we tend to forget probably the biggest addition, Miles Jack. I mean, I don't even know how this keeps flying under my radar. I think everyone is sleeping on this addition, as well as we may as well add that last year the Steelers did not have Stephon Tuitt. They did not have Tyson Alualu. So Alualu is back. He's a little older, but they drafted DeMarvin Leal and also picked up Larry Ogunjobi. And I know a lot of Bengals fans are upset about losing Ogunjobi, especially when they're talking about over to the Steelers. And
they were, dude. They were. I'm telling you, a lot of them, it was like poetry in motion watching this happen on Twitter, because there were like a handful of Bengals, like influencers, if you want to call them that, tweeting about how they wanted Ogunjobi back because he was still available and hadn't signed yet. And then like the next day was when he was visiting here, and they all were tweeting like, "Don't you do it, Larry. Don't you leave. Oh my God, Bengals, make him move back." And then I saw all that happening, and I got all their tweets ready in my drafts, and I was waiting for the news to break that we got Ogunjobi. And as soon as we signed him, it was laugh emojis galore, quote tweets everywhere. I was making fun of all of them. I was like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? Say he sucks now? Say he's not good? I got you right here, begging for him to come back." And he's wearing number 91, which that works for me. That's a good D-line number. That's solid.
Yeah, he went and took Stefan's number. Stefan had the double-digit sack numbers the previous year. I understand the Steelers weren't very good against the run. I think all of these things make them better against the run, and it's classic Pittsburgh move to have a veteran guy and a rookie, and then we'll see. Maybe they duke it out. Leal might not be 100%. He's putting on weight. It's same thing, acclimation to the pros. And
I did hear that, though. I heard that too. I heard he's already put on a good amount of weight, and they're pleasantly surprised and impressed with how Leal has kind of hit the ground running and been putting weight on. It's almost certain at this point that, yeah, they're going to have him on the line. So the idea of him maybe being like a Lamar Woodley type that they try to rush, that's kind of out the window, I think. I think he's confirmed going to be on the line, which is great because we need it. So I'm happy with that decision and development.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget Chris Wormley in 15 games, 7 sacks. I mean, Cam had 10, and Alex Highsmith had 6. I think there's a ton of disrespect here on the Steelers defense, and the Steelers defense carried the team in 2019. If Bud Dupree and Devin Bush don't get hurt in 2020, do they challenge the undefeated 72 Dolphins record? You know what I mean? I mean, Dupree and TJ Watt, the previous year combined, I think they were the second most sacks for a tandem of edge rushers.
They were so fun to watch together, man.
And of course, Bush, he hasn't been the same, but I think he could come back. And if he doesn't, I don't think it hurts the team as much because maybe they don't use him as a 3-down backer anymore, and maybe they use Miles Jack in that type of situation. I think Jack is equally athletic. He's definitely more athletic than Joe Schobert was, and definitely more athletic than Vince Williams was. So it's somebody you can maybe keep on the field more often. And of course, they have all of these slew of safeties. So when you boil down, why is everyone overlooking the Pittsburgh Steelers this year? There's really only one other answer, because we think, just based on what we've said about offense, defense, and otherwise with what the Steelers are doing, can they get more production from the quarterback position? Do they have skill position players that are budding stars? They already have stars on the defense, and they added some other. They didn't lose anything. They have a stud kicker. Their special teams. They have the all-pro gunner Olszewski as a return guy. Presley Harvin III, the BFP, the big fat punter's got to get a little bit better, and there's somebody in camp that's going to challenge him, of course. But what we're really looking at here is the Super Bowl hangover of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I don't have a negative thing really to say about Burrow. I was just hoping that the ownership with the Cincinnati Bengals didn't get this dude just absolutely killed, where his head pops off like a Lego minifigure. He took the most sacks, I think, of anyone last year, and he was still like, what, top 3? Or maybe he was second behind Aaron Rodgers in passing, which is pretty crazy. He's got the weapons. I think the Steelers can definitely put the corners I just mentioned up against all 3 of those guys. They added Hayden Hurst. They added some guys on the offensive line. We'll get into more depth on some of that other stuff. They didn't really lose anything on defense, except for if Jesse Bates doesn't end up playing on that tag. It's going to be pretty huge, but Jesse came on later in the season, too. He was a little suspect, and I took some heat for that when I did the first pregame preview for the first game of the year. And you tend to forget how some of that went, too. TJ Watt, I think, played like 1/2 of those 2 games. And we're talking about what an impact that he ends up making. Within the division, I think it's a lot more fair that you don't have James Pierre out there playing up on like T. Higgins. It's going to make a world of difference when you're talking about Bengals versus Steelers. I think they can keep it a lot closer to the vest. And the Bengals themselves, I know I'm going to take a lot of hate for this. They put all their eggs in the defensive basket in their draft. And I understand it's because they went in free agency and they went after the offensive lineman. They got a guy on a rookie contract with quarterback. They got some money. They're going to be competitive. They should be the favorite to win this division. Okay. I'm going to put that there because they did it last year. but they also stayed unnaturally healthy throughout this whole process. They didn't lose any major players except for Ogunjobi, and that's the reason why they were able to let him go, because of some of the other guys that they have on that defensive line that were able to shift in and take his place, and they were able to see what the future is. So that was one of the bigger names that they ended up losing. And
they lost Uzoma for the late playoffs, and he was a key component to their offense, because they missed him when they lost him.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And by the way, Ogunjobi, 16 quarterback hits last year, 7 sacks.
Oh, hell yeah. I knew he had the 7 sacks because he matches warmly with that. That's a perfect camp battle right there. They both got decent sack numbers. Not that that's I'm not a stat picker like that, but I mean, like, I noticed that right away that he's right there with warmly sack-wise, because I was waiting to see if people were like, is this guy even good? And but he's more of a collapser and a man mover than Wormley is, I believe personally. I think Wormley is a solid player, and he's got the leg up as far as the incumbent in camp, and he'll probably go out there with the first team for the first couple practices. But they're going to want to get Larry rolling, especially because they did get him on a good deal, but they're still giving him like a solid for a 1 year. It's a solid contract, so I think they're going to want to get him incorporated.
Oh, absolutely. It was like $8 million. He should be ready to go. I mean, like you said, the Bears were going to give him a lot more money to play there, and they were paying him like a star. So the Steelers, you never know, and it works out for him. The Steelers will have the money to offer him something else. It depends on what happens. Is he healthy? Is he not healthy? And it ends up being like Morgan Burnett to Terrell Edmonds with DeMarvin Leal, and then maybe Leal ends up being the guy that ends up playing. Getting some playing time when they weren't really planning on it. But again, this is why they have the usual veteran and rookie kind of 1-2 punch, and they kind of hedge their bets. They have a little bit of an insurance policy.
You know what? Eating off of that, or branching off of that, he's not a rookie anymore. He's a second-year player. But a camp battle that I'm really looking forward to seeing on the defense is going to be KZ and Trey Norwood, because it seems like, I was thinking about this the other day because we were talking about training camp, and the one training camp I went to, I had noticed that they were heavily using a third safety and getting him incorporated to the defense, so much so that it caught my eye in such a fashion that I was like, this guy isn't just like going in for reps. He's playing a lot. Like, they like him. He's with the first team defense and making plays.
You remember who that was?
Ended up being Cam Kelly.
Yes. Yes, it was. I was wondering if you got the name. You're like fishing for it there in space with your.
Yeah, dude. So like, I remember walking away from that being like, dude, put Cam Kelly on your 53s, because this guy is playing with the first team defense a lot. The Steelers are trying to incorporate a third safety in these packages and get him like on the field a lot, because everyone thinks, safeties, you only have 2 back there that start. Well, the Steelers have an idea of this almost like futuristic defense that other teams are doing too, where a third guy plays quite a bit, especially when you have a guy, 2 guys really. Edmonds can play in the box and be very physical. Minka can do whatever you ask of him. One of the best safeties in the game, if not the best. So it's a perfect tandem in between those two, in which you can put a guy in like KZ to just be a center fielder and be rangy, pick the ball off, or a Trey Norwood like last year, like we saw, and play a lot, whether you want to roll him down in the box, match him up man on a tight end, or possibly even a receiver, roll him back in coverage to center field. It's all possible. And they did this with Cam Kelly, and he ended up on the team and actually had an interception, made some plays, but then got in trouble off the field for something, and they cut him and never heard of him again. The same thing sort of started to happen the next year or the year after with Curtis Riley in camp, another free safety that all the beat reporters were like, this guy's picking off every other pass, here, that, and the other. And then he either got hurt late in the preseason. I forget why the Steelers cut bait with him, but he was the next Cam Kelly. Like, they've wanted this guy. They want a third safety to play a lot on the defense. And between KZ and Norwood, one of those two is going to be that guy. He's going to be incorporated so much so that you're going to get used to seeing him out there, as much as like Mike Hilton wasn't a starter on defense by the base definition of 2 corners, but people got used to seeing him so much, he pretty much was. That's going to be KZ or Norwood.
I think one of those guys might be the starting strong safety.
Push Edmonds out, you think?
Well, the way that Edmonds was used last year, he came off the field Actually, a lot more than what you would think for a
I like
starting
that take too.
safety.
That's a spicy take, especially coming from a show that we're famous Edmonds fans on this show.
Well,
So
I see him as more dimebacker role. I saw the way that he excelled last year, and it was, let's put this dude straight up on a tight end. Every so often, he was lined up on a wide receiver in the slot, and he wasn't picked apart or taken advantage of in the ways that a lot of the, oh, he's a first-round bust Twitter types end up being with him. And his contract, this isn't a contract. What was it, like $2 million, two something? For 1 year. It's low to where he doesn't have to have a lot of PT. You know what I mean? That's the same thing we were saying about Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi's making $8 million. He should be on the field. Edmonds at 2 something is like veteran backup money, so to speak. But that's the role he could be in. Now, maybe he's just a guy that they float around, follow whoever, do this. Maybe they even start blitzing him. They started using him in that capacity last year, and I think
got good at it.
They started to figure out the best way to utilize his talents. And some of that, I think, is Terrell Austin, that's now the defensive coordinator. Well, we know Mike Tomlin's making the calls there, but Austin worked with the DBs. So my back
to Flores assistant.
Yeah. Well, definitely will help his game, especially if he's playing like a hybrid linebacker for sure. So the last part of this equation still is the Bengals. And now the Bengals, not only they have to have a good bill of health with all of that luck, they're not going to be playing a last place schedule anymore either. They're going to be playing against the tops all the way across the division, and also that same they draw the Rams, I think, is the no. Who was first in the? No, that's not the way it actually works. It's the regular season. So you got to see where they finished in regular season in the AFC. Maybe they were like second or third or something like that. So they'll get the second or third from the NFC from last year, which I think Green Bay had to bye. So I'm trying to think. It could be the Tampa Bay is already on the schedule because of the division thing. So I'll have to self-correct there. I could probably.
Well, either way, you're right. Super Bowl hangover is a very real thing. Steeler fans should know that. It happens to teams, and it's a tired football cliche, but it happens. If you are in the Super Bowl and you lose, chances are, and history states, that you're not going to have an easy time or a good time defending that second place trophy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that kind of, I don't know if it really puts a bow on everything that the points we're trying to make, but there's a lot of reasons out there people are overlooking the Steelers, I believe. Yeah. We didn't get into picking apart the schedules and wins, losses. That's going to come a little bit later. We're going to look at training camp. The real reason we haven't gone through all that right now is because of Deshaun Watson. Everybody's anticipating a suspension and waiting for that news. And we should probably, as we always say, as we're doing this show and recording it and getting it out to the people, check Twitter and see if anything's been happening.
Yeah.
But as we're
getting more massages during the taping of this show.
How about that? How did the number jump? I'm reading a preview magazine, and of course it goes to print probably in June and then hits the newsstand. So some things are out of date. 22 counts or 22 whatever. And then all of a sudden he was settled with 30. I'm like, wait a minute. When did it jump? I knew it went to like 24 or 26. When did it jump to 30? And let me give my.
That was because the Texans had to do it like a settlement. The Texans got in trouble for their hand, and again, this is all supposedly and allegedly, because I don't want to get in trouble for this. But they said the Texans they got in trouble, or they were being people were going after them because they kept this covered up, or they helped Deshaun Watson book hotel rooms and stuff of that nature. So they had to settle that in court and to not get in trouble, the Texans, I mean. And in doing so, there were 4 more women who came forward or are going to come forward because of the facts that were stated in this settlement. That so that would make the 26-30.
Well, that's aside from having to do all the math, Ben got in trouble for just one, and I know that the CBAs and things are a little different, and the team, his former team imposed whatever, but it's kind of tough because you see what happened over in Major League Baseball, and I'm saying he's not just going to get. I'd be very shocked to just get away with it. There's people out there that believe he won't be suspended at all, and I think that sets a very bad precedent, especially when again, I don't want to get too thick in the meat of this, but Ray Rice never got to play football again, but Kareem Hunt did. Yeah, it's just
makes no sense.
Where do you balance some of this? The only thing happening right now in the Twitterverse. Zachadonia, as Brian would call you. Brian will be back, by the way. We were going to go over the weekend and put something in the can for everybody, but it just didn't make sense because we're still waiting on the Watson news. So the only thing we have newsworthy is one ketchup bottle is down.
No.
Yeah, I thought that we're going to keep these things, man. Maybe they'll do something else with it.
The one time I don't have Twitter pulled up over here for me to watch myself, this is what happens. This is why I have developed OCD, and I need to be on the Twitter sphere at all times, making sure that I'm standing guard and nothing bad happens to the Steelers. Now that I wasn't on for the past hour plus, and now there's a ketchup bottle gone.
Yeah. That's wild, isn't it? Try and bring it back up one more time. There it is. So, man, that's crazy. I was wondering how big that sucker was in like all reality.
Do you see the legs of the people underneath?
Yeah. I tried to bring it up a little bit bigger so people could see it, but you could find it. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are retweeting this all the way around, and a lot of crying memes and gifs and stuff like that out there.
Rooney lied to us. Rooney gave that press conference saying they're trying to find a way for the ketchup bottles to stay.
Well, I don't know that the ketchup bottles necessarily stay per se, but I think it might just be the Heinz Red Zone that they put like up on the screen, like some of the other. You still have some of the other name sponsors that get the name whatever. Like,
dude, can you imagine week 1 or week 2, whenever the first home game is, and like no one's expecting that, and the offense gets down to like the 20 or whatever, and like you see on the big jumbotron, it like goes black, and then you see Heinz Red. People are drunk angels are gonna go crazy. Like, that's right, the Heinz Red Zone.
Oh my God, it'll be the new Renegade, but for the offense. You need a Renegade for the offense. That would be that's pretty cool, man. And I can't wait to say Mason throws some tutties out there. So
me too. Yeah, if injuries allow it, I'll hopefully be seeing him throw touchdowns too.
We still have a lot of meat on the bone for this conversation. We're gonna go through the schedules. We're hoping, because like again, the Watson thing will make such a huge difference versus if Brissett's playing. So we can't necessarily just go through the whole AFC North just yet and try and pick winners, losers. Plus, I kind of want to see some of the preseason ball as well. So just tying up the end of this show, again, we're thinking perhaps the Cincinnati Bengals being a Super Bowl hangover, maybe the chief reason that people are thinking the Steelers aren't contenders in the AFC North. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens, who were at the top of their game before a lot of injuries, and they're getting some guys back in a strong draft. That could be a reason. Deshaun Watson, big news with the Cleveland Browns or whatever. But I got to leave everyone with this very thought. When has the Pittsburgh Steelers, or when have, I don't know, like half awake still, drinking coffee. When have the Pittsburgh Steelers ever been in the basement of the AFC North? It has never happened since the inception of the division. And in fact, when you take a look at a team like the Cleveland Browns, they haven't won a division title since it was the AFC Central in 1989.
Yeah.
I mean,
dude, it's corny. It's corny, and it sounds like there's no like facts to back it up, and people they can't understand it unless they live it. But this is why we are how we are here in Pittsburgh. And as a Steeler fan, it's like, oh, you just think you're going to be good again? Yes, dude. This was my whole issue about people thinking we were going to suck last year. We did suck last year. Guess where we were? The playoffs. So, like, even when our team isn't good by national standards, even when the quarterback of the past 20 years tears his elbow, we were the 7th seed last year. If they would have done the 17 playoff thing for the Steelers with the Mason and Duck year, we would have made the playoffs with those two because we were the 7th seed, hypothetically.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, dude. It's hard to explain, and there's no, like, on-paper way to say it, but we feel this way because the Steelers they don't have losing seasons. They don't play losing football, not under Cowher, not under Tomlin, whoever is coaching them. They find ways to win. They give Steelers fans and they give Pittsburgh like what it deserves as a football city. And again, I warned the people that was going to sound corny, but it's the God honest truth.
No, it is the God honest truth that we've mentioned before, with the exception of one season where they lose a tiebreaker to Tennessee. They would have made the playoffs in every single season that Mike Tomlin has been a head coach. That is a completely mind-blowing fact. So, well, Zach, thanks once again for joining me here on another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. We are up against it, as maybe per the usual, maybe not the usual, maybe the unusual, but thank you everyone out there for viewing or listening wherever you might be. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, my name is Joe Kuzma. His name is The Flash, Zach Celadonia. And as we always do on this show, to close out, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.